Okay.
Okay, I'm here with Caleb Maupin, and basically everybody already knows by now the whole billionaire thing that Caleb Maupin posted the other day, and there's a lot of misinformation about it, and there's a lot of reservations about it on my part. So I just want to preface this by saying I am. You're not advocating the preservation of Jeff Bezos or anything like that. You are in absolutely no way defending billionaires that exist within this system and the exploitative relations that they engage with.
Of course, yeah,
Yeah.
and like I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, based on what I tweeted, and I mean, I'm all for a wealth tax. I'm all for a billionaires tax. I'm all for expropriating Amazon and making it public property. I don't understand how anyone got from this that I'm a supporter of the U.S. ruling class. I mean, that's a huge stretch.
Okay. Now here's the problem.
Yeah.
You're using the term billionaires as something in the context of socialism in which such things would be abolished.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, there wouldn't be any billionaires in socialism. The definition of a billionaire is someone who has billions of dollars, which is only attainable by having an unequal exchange and all that.
Well, technically, yes. Right? I mean, in the literal sense of the word, and you're talking about people literally having billions of dollars, right?
Yes.
That is what that word literally means, right? In that sense, one individual having literally $1 billion in U.S. currency, I'm wrong, right? However, if you refer to the amount of wealth and material comfort enjoyed by billionaires in our time, the goal of socialism and communism and the goal of Marxism is to bring that to all of humanity. And that was the point that I was making. And what's interesting is there's actually a long history. I'm not the first person to have said this. In the Soviet Union, it was commonly taught by the Communist Party that in our country, all people are millionaires. They didn't say billionaires, but millionaires, because we own all the major steel mills, we own all the factories, we own the means of production, and all the workers are millionaires in the Soviet Union. That was a very common expression.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's just an expression. It's not a literal thing.
Right, but it's important. And the reason that I brought it up is because this phrase "abolish billionaires" has been going around. That's it was AOC, Bernie Sanders. They've been saying "abolish billionaires."
Okay. I
The
can get
Marxist movement doesn't want to abolish billionaires; it wants to abolish capitalists. Right. The
correct.
problem with and it wants to, in the process of doing that, create a society where the level of wealth and material comfort currently only enjoyed by billionaires is accessible to everyone. Furthermore,
Okay,
in order
okay,
to,
wait. Okay, here's the problem that I have with that.
yeah,
That's not physically possible. For a billionaire to be a billionaire, for example, in the literal sense, not everybody could be a billionaire because purchasing power of
right,
currency, etc. But you're talking about socialism. You're talking about I think you're probably talking communism. You're talking post-socialism.
right.
Yeah,
Well, and
but
and
the problem with this is that not only is it let's say if it was even possible, it's extremely inefficient. It's it's
well, why
it's a
is it impossible?
tremendous waste of resources. Like
Why is it
why? Okay,
impossible?
in all truth, if you had like a real like socialist country, etc., you would have a huge mass transportation system.
Yeah,
Like the idea of like offering everybody a car or offering everybody a luxury car is a tremendous waste.
right.
It's not something that can really be done because resources are finite.
Well, I think you're getting at a couple different things here. But if everyone had guaranteed transportation, they could get into a luxury car anytime they felt like it. They could get into an airplane anytime they felt like it. They could just, from each according to their own ability to each according to their needs, they would have the level of access to transportation that only billionaires have in our time, or only wealthier people, right? So that's kind of my point.
Okay, but billionaires
right?
don't use public transportation.
That's what I'm saying, right? That yeah, we working class people, and public transportation for us is buses and trains. But for billionaires, they can get into a private jet anytime they want. They can get into a sports car anytime they want. Shouldn't average working class people have access to those modes of transportation as well?
I'm saying it's not possible.
Why not?
There's only so much steel in the world. There's really even only so much fuel. I understand, even if you use solar power, alternative energies, etc., there's only so much that we can pull out at any given time. The problem is that now you have 7 billion planes flying around the planet at once. This is horribly inefficient. It's not physically possible to gather the resources for this. The resources don't exist. Even in capitalism, the idea, okay, if we understand money as an abstract representation of value, if you took the world's wealth currently just currently at our own productive level right now, and you divided wealth across the entire world in like a total egalitarian way, the average income would be about $5,000 a year. And that's really not very much. But again, that relies on a certain set of premises. I understand.
I want to stop you right there. Because see, what you're saying right there, that has nothing to do with socialism. Socialism is not dividing up all the wealth equally so everyone has the same
I'm just
income.
using it as a form of measure,
as
the amount of productive output of a society.
Abolish billionaires, because when you talk that way, look, I've heard it my whole life. Communists want everyone to be poor. Look,
I'm not advocating everybody be poor.
But when you start talking that way, right? And this is when we frame the conversation as some people have too much, and our goal is to make it fair so they don't have as much. That in and of itself plays into this myth that communists believe in poverty.
No, it doesn't play into that. It's a misrepresentation of our position. But that's kind of the problem. The goal of communism...
Is it a misrepresentation, though? I mean, I think that...
No one's advocating poverty. And nowhere have we even tried to do that.
But that is what we are constantly accused of by our class enemies. And
of course, because they're lying sexist. Because they're lying sexist shit.
At a time when working class people are struggling to pay their bills, struggling to keep their home from being foreclosed, struggling to keep from losing their car and all of that, they hear the idea that communists are opposed to private property and that communists want to take your stuff away from you.
Okay, so really that's what this is about.
No, wait.
It's about this is about the optics?
No, it's not even about the optics. What I'm saying is, right, if you read Marx, and I have here in front of me the critique of the
I know, super abundance and all that. But what you're advocating for is an abundance that's not possible.
We are not opposed to wealth.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not being against wealth.
So if you say abolish billionaires, you're saying these people have this level of wealth. We are opposed to that wealth, and we are not opposed to wealth. We are for a world with so much abundance.
Are you redefining what a billionaire is? A billionaire is a person who has billions of dollars.
Yes, and obviously under communism there would be no currency, but everyone would have the level of wealth and access that
then billionaires wouldn't exist.
Well, then no currency would exist.
Yes, so then billionaires wouldn't exist.
Right, but we are not opposed to people living in the level of prosperity that billionaires currently enjoy.
Okay, but why use the term billionaires? That just seems needlessly confusing on my part.
Because so much of the left has gotten into this mindset that wealth is bad, that somehow people having stuff is bad. There's this anti-consumerism, and there's this notion that working class people are too comfortable and that it's all going to destroy Mother Earth. We have to reduce the human population. Obama went to Africa And he told
Okay,
the people
Marxists
in
don't
Africa,
believe in reducing the world, but no real Marxist is advocating
well,
reducing population.
you should listen to what the people at Jacobin think when they wrote an
Oh
article
my!
opposing
Do I have to
home
tell you what's
ownership.
wrong with Jacobin?
I know, but I'm trying to explain why I am making this point, why I've chosen this hill to die on, so to speak, is because, when the folks at Jacobin write an article opposing private home ownership, the rate of home ownership in every socialist country has been massive. Socialists enable workers to get their own homes. But the folks at Jacobin write articles saying that they're opposed to home ownership, right? Obama goes to Africa and tells the people on the African continent that if everyone there had a car and a house with air conditioning, Mother Earth would explode, basically telling people in Africa they need to stay poor for the sake of the environment.
In the context of capitalism.
Well, precisely, and in the context of fossil fuels and all of that. We have to get off of fossil fuels. We need a higher energy source. We need nuclear fusion. And that we aspire to create great amounts of wealth for the working class. And our enemies have constantly tried to obscure that. And when we say things like abolish billionaires, that reinforces that. And a lot of the existing left, like Vosh, like Jacobin, like I call him Skippy the Bear, Thought Slime, they really do want to reduce the amount of wealth in the world. They really think that consumption needs to go down. And we have to oppose this. We can't buy into this pessimistic mindset.
I think that maybe the problem we're having here is that the term billionaire doesn't fit what you're describing.
But then they shouldn't use it when they say abolish billionaires. They should say abolish capitalism. But they're saying abolish billionaires, giving the impression that we are opposed to
There's
wealth.
a particular context to that.
And that's the problem with the term.
These guys are radlibs who aren't even actually leftists. So when they say abolish billionaires, they're literally talking about just making a more fair capitalism. When you and I say abolish billionaires, we're literally saying to hell with the system is bad.
But I'm not saying abolish billionaires.
Okay, but if I say abolish billionaires, I'm saying abolish capitalism. I'm not saying more fair
whereby
capitalism.
People in our current day become billionaires by exploiting other people, by accumulating capital at the expense of the broad masses of people. Abolish that process, and in doing so, enable the wealth currently enjoyed only by billionaires to be accessible to all humanity.
Okay. I still don't get why the term billionaire has to be used. But let's put the issue of the term billionaire aside. Okay, you've defined what it is that you mean by this abundance.
Right.
So let's throw the term billionaire aside.
Well, that's the entire basis of the discussion. It's going to be hard to throw it aside.
Well, yeah, I know, but let's. I mean, that's the problem. You've changed the definition of billionaire, but we know what it is what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just take the definition of billionaire aside. Okay. It is a fact that if the world consumes resources, I'm not talking about what we produce, but the rate at which we consume the world's resources. If the entire world were to live at the level of the United States, just say the United States, it would require 4 planet Earths in order to do it. I'm not advocating we be poor. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying what you're suggesting, that if everybody consumed at the same level of a billionaire, it would be physically impossible to do.
With our current mode of energy.
It's not just energy.
Yes, it is. There was a book published in the 1970s by the Club of Rome, a big group of very powerful representatives of the ruling class, and it was called The Limits to Growth. And it made this very argument, right, that we don't have the resources to continue living as we live. Growth is dangerous. Growth is bad. And if you were to follow the logic of that book, we should, be living in a oil scarcity right now. We should have run out of oil. We should be just completely having a big meltdown. But the thing is,
actually, the planet kind of is having a meltdown.
Well, yes, but hydraulic fracking was invented, so there was more oil. Number one, right? And then on top of that, there were minerals that at the time that book was published that were completely worthless, right? That were in the mountains of Africa.
Okay,
that had no value.
I understand what you're saying.
They're very valuable, and that If we stay on fossil fuels exactly as we are now, and if we only start acquiring resources from this planet, which China is already not doing, China is already acquiring resources from the moon.
What?
And if we limit ourselves to this planet and our current mode of technology, you are correct. But I think humanity can do better than that, right? We no longer burn coal.
Okay, I understand that. I'm not arguing against the energy thing. Energy is the most abundant thing in the universe. I absolutely agree. There's more energy in the universe than we could ever use in a trillion lifetimes.
Big monopolies have been trying their hardest to hold back anything that would get us to a better
energy
source.
I agree with you on that. But I'm not really arguing that there's finite energy. I mean, theoretically there is finite energy. Even the universe will die of heat death in a couple of trillion years, but that's besides the point. Okay, I'm not arguing about a lack of energy. Of course, the universe is completely abundant of energy.
Yeah.
The problem is that the amount of resources put into obtaining these resources that are not on the planet Earth, it would exceed what we would get out of it.
On our current level of technology, you are correct.
That level of technology that we would need.
Let's also address another point.
We're centuries away from that.
Go on with the space thing, right? Before we even go there, let's talk also about just how much waste goes on because of capitalism.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing that there's waste. Imagine that waste wouldn't compensate.
In a socialist society, if you got rid of junk mail, right? How much junk mail do you get in the mail every day? Right? Imagine all the resources that are wasted on capitalists trying to get you to buy something.
I know there's waste, but even if we eliminated the waste.
Right, and had rational use of resources. If we started using the resources in a centrally planned and rational way, rather than simply by the logic of the market, that alone would have
agree.
An astronomical impact on reducing human consumption and making human consumption more logical, right? This is one of my pet peeves with the petty bourgeois left, is they always want to blame average working people.
I'm not blaming average working people.
I know you're not. I'm talking about why I have to make this point, right? And that's the thing. You're a sensible person. Your objections have always been rational based on what you understand as a Marxist. You understand Marxism, right? But the people walking around claiming to be Marxists do not. And based on that, they lead to very pessimistic, dark conclusions. And that's why we need to differentiate ourselves from those who say wealth is bad.
Okay, I think we would need to, they're using the word wealth differently than we are.
Mm-hmm.
They're using it strictly in terms of an amount of cash, because they are radlibs. They are still talking in terms of the capitalist system.
Right.
Even I think it was Xander Hall said that I could be wrong about this. But even Xander Hall said that he was paid by the Democratic Party to have people go to funnel people toward Biden in a discussion with Kyle Kulinski. That's what I heard. I didn't hear him say that.
Someone tweeted at me. Someone who claimed to be an anarcho-communist tweeted at me, "Only capitalism can create the amount of wealth billionaires have." And when I saw that, I was utterly shocked.
Okay, I understand what he means when he says that.
But socialism can produce huge amounts of wealth. Socialism is the reason that Russia was able to defeat the Nazis and invented space travel. Socialism can produce billions of dollars worth of wealth.
They weren't transcending the physical limits of the world.
Right, but to say that only capitalism can produce the amount of wealth that billionaires have, no. And in fact, it's under capitalism.
He's using the word billionaire differently than you are.
Right, but the workers are the ones who produce that wealth. And if we seized control of the means of production, we could easily produce the amount of wealth that Jeff Bezos have. If Amazon was run by the people, we could produce just as much wealth and profit without him exploiting labor.
Well,
right?
Actually, I would kind of disagree with that, because Amazon doesn't produce anything.
It's a distribution outfit. You're correct, right? Okay, right. I mean, it's shipping, right? Okay.
But the thing is, what you're arguing in that particular case is two different definitions of what is a billionaire. I'm saying what you're describing as a billionaire, or a billionaire level of wealth and use of resources, this moment in time is a physical impossibility, even if we did have socialism. At this time. Maybe in the future, I'm going to be honest, really very far away in the future, given the amount of resources it would take to invest in developing enough of this technology, assuming that it can even be done. Because sometimes there's things that science cannot do.
Is communism possible? Is the higher stage of communism possible?
I think it is. I think in some cases, Mao had already reached it.
In China, where there was huge levels of poverty, when most of the country didn't have electricity and running water, you think they were reaching communism?
If you're going to define communism as superabundance, if they themselves, between individual people in some communes, had eliminated the use of money, ran things democratically, yes, I would say it's not the ideal communism.
That's not communism. That's
it is.
Strictly read, communism is the abolition of scarcity.
That's an aspect of it. But
No,
communism
is
particularly a set of social and economic relations.
Based
a mode
on
of production.
Vast material abundance, right? It's when there is so much abundance.
Here's where we're getting wrong.
There was huge amounts of coercion in China in the 1970s. How could that be communism? There was a state.
I would say
stuff was rationed. I
would like to clarify. One, I didn't say the whole country was communist. I said some communes, the more advanced ones, did manage to make it to that level. And two, I would actually argue in the 70s, and I wouldn't even necessarily consider China to be even socialist anymore.
Right, but I mean, communism is a society. Marx defines it as a society where the division between mental and physical labor has broken down.
Okay.
Right, as a society where labor has become life's prime want, meaning people only work because they feel like it, right? And finally, I mean, this is in the Critique of the Goethe Program, and then he says that that's a society which, at that point, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, meaning people just do what they feel like doing and get what they want from society, right?
Okay. Each according to his need. You're telling me the average person needs a billionaire level of consumption?
Of course not. And that's each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, and wealth flows more abundantly when labor has become not only a means of life but life's prime want, meaning there's no coercion making them work. They just work because they want to.
Okay, let's say all of that. All of that minus this conception of superabundance. Is it communism?
No, because if you have scarcity, you're going to have coercion, right? Because this is the definition of communism: is vast material abundance. You know, if there is scarcity,
you're hyper fixated on this concept of hyper abundance.
Because that is the definition
and
of communism.
The level of abundance you're talking about. I mean, Marx wasn't talking about people becoming billionaires.
Yes, he was. He was talking about a society.
Billionaires didn't even exist in his time. Do
billionaires have to work? No, because they have so much that they.
So how could he have been arguing for billionaires if they were something that wasn't even something that was only theoretically possible?
Right, it's the final stage. It's after socialism.
Okay,
when it has raised the level of productivity so high that the state itself can start to wither away because there is so much abundant wealth and the need for coercion that Marxism understands that the state, class society, all of these class divisions, inequality is all rooted in scarcity. And that communism, or that the history of humanity, historical materialism, has been the constant struggle of humanity.
Okay, I would wholly disagree with that. It's not rooted in scarcity.
Why did hunter-gatherer civilization end?
Yeah, because they had scarcity.
Right, because they created scarcity. They got too good at it with their hunting and gathering. We were so good at hunting and gathering that the old order was not sustainable anymore. We had to start growing our own food. We had to get to a higher state of abundance because scarcity was created
We
by
had
our
developed
efficiency.
productive forces that went beyond that.
Higher
And then there,
productive forces. Exactly.
yes, and then that created, and that eventually turned into private property. And then eventually the system changed along with it, creating laws of ownership, governments, etc., for ownership of private property. Not because, because. Yeah, because of conceptions of property ownership.
Right, and that capitalism was more productive and a higher mode of production than feudalism. And feudalism became unsustainable, and so you got a higher mode called capitalism.
Okay.
Socialism is a higher mode of production that is more abundant and more productive than capitalism. And communism is the ultimate liberation of humanity from scarcity. And if you read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, he talks about how under communism, it's the first time that humans are no longer threatened by scarcity at all. They have completely declared their independence from nature.
I agree. But Marx was not talking about an insane level of consumption on the level of billionaire. He was talking about an alleviation of like the 1850s poverty. And I'm not trying to say that
alleviating 1850s poverty doesn't lay the basis for getting rid of the state. Alleviating 1850s poverty doesn't lay the basis for breaking down all divisions between mental and manual labor.
Okay, yes, I understand that. But Marx was not talking about some kind of utopian position where you could consume more than physically exists. You are talking the realm of science fiction. And I know what is science fiction today becomes science fact tomorrow.
You're using the word utopian, and
I am calling it utopian.
Right, and this is the opposite of utopianism. Utopianism says that we can achieve communism by declaring it, by just saying, you know what, we're going to be equal, and that's what Robert Owen and all of them tried to do. And the book that I'm quoting to you is called Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, where Engels lays out that is on the material basis of productive forces that we got rid of feudalism, that capitalism emerged, and that'll be on the basis of rationality.
I agree.
Yeah, and that productive forces and the eradication of scarcity is what lays the basis for that higher stage of communism. This is not utopianism. This is scientific socialism.
I'm calling it utopian because the level of resources do not exist.
They don't exist on this planet as we currently use them. But there's talk of cars that could run on water. Right?
Okay, I'm not talking about energy and fuel. I've
so
already
about? If it's not an issue of energy and fuel,
gold.
Steel. All right. Is there steel elsewhere in the galaxy?
The amount of resources and energy input into getting to those resources and bringing them back exceeds what goes into getting them.
With our current energy source.
Yes.
We're now back to talking about energy. We obviously would have to get to a much more efficient way of operating it. Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, you're talking about some kind of techno-utopia bullshit.
But this is what communism has always been about, techno-utopia.
Communism
is techno-utopia. That is what it is.
No.
It is about getting to a society where humans are no longer restrained by scarcity. That is the entire premise.
You could do that without ever accomplishing that.
Where if the Communist Manifesto, he says
you could do that without ever leaving the planet. You could.
How are you going to do what I read you from the critique of the
scarcity of okay, the concept of leaving the planet and getting resources from another place did not exist in Marx's time. He could not have been referring to it.
Sure.
So he was already referring to it as something that could exist in his time.
He didn't know about a lot of things. He didn't know about computers. He didn't know about cell phones. I don't understand the point. But he had the imagination.
No, I just explained the point.
That the human mind is not restrained, right?
I know the human mind isn't restrained.
They create things. Hunter-gatherers maybe had no conception of plows and agriculture, but humans are creative creatures by their nature. We are always striving to get to a higher mode. That's the nature of humanity. And Marx understood this about the human species. And Engels wrote this beautiful essay called The Role of Labor in the Transition from Ape to Man.
I get that. That's not the question here.
Well, then what is the point you're making?
as I have already said, the amount of resources. Okay, I really there's two arguments. I haven't even gotten to the second one yet. The Marx could not have been talking about that because it was something that didn't exist. When he was talking about an elimination of the threat of not I forget the word right now, not having enough, he wasn't talking about some kind of insane utopia. He was talking about producing enough to cover people's needs. He wasn't talking about creating everybody at the level of a billionaire. He was not saying that. He was not arguing that.
But just covering
this
people's
is
needs
something.
doesn't
No, I
create the
know that.
basis
I'm not
for
talking about
eliminating
just.
the state.
He was talking about people's needs. Actually, he
Yeah,
wasn't
but just,
saying.
just doing that doesn't alone create the basis for the state withering away. You can, I mean, if everyone, I mean, people.
Marx
in
never
prisons, everyone
clarified
has their needs met, but they
what
still have guards.
would wither away the state.
What?
He never really clarified what would be the withering away of the state.
But Lenin did in his book, The State and Revolution. There's a whole section on the higher phase of communist society.
Yes, that's a theory, and I'd like to see that put into practice someday.
Well, I mean, it won't happen until we get a socialist society that is producing higher than what the capitalist societies have already developed, right? Every country that has ever had
I would even argue that the Soviet Union was producing more. I'm sorry. You're talking about people go for socialism because everybody will be billionaires. Okay, not only is this fraudulent on the fact that it's not possible, I'm sorry, but you're advocating technology that does not exist and that we can't even confirm can exist. But even if it was,
people poorer. That we are not opposed to wealth.
We have never advocated for people being poor. We have only ever lifted people up from where they were before socialism.
That's why we're different than Bernie Sanders and AOC and these phonies out there.
They're not socialists. They are not advocating for socialism.
We should not repeat their slogan, abolish billionaires. We must distinguish ourselves with genuine slogans that don't make it sound like we oppose wealth as a matter of principle. What's wrong with billionaires is not their wealth, but how they acquire it.
Okay, so really your argument here is that we shouldn't use a slogan that radlibs are using. Okay,
yes,
fine.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's
I would.
Exactly
I wouldn't. Okay, in that case, I would say, okay, don't say abolish billionaires. I would say kill capitalism.
Yep, I
kill
agree.
the system.
We agree. We absolutely 100% agree.
Okay, now the other problem is that human consciousness is not forwarded by having more things. In fact, that actually increases our material relations between people.
Go into more detail, please.
Okay. As it stands right now, we relate to each other by the commodities we use. And yes, the commodity form would no longer exist inside of communism, let's say, because I would argue that there is some commodity form even in socialism. But let's just say the best of all possible worlds inside of communism. The problem is that when you just create more stuff and it's more stuff and it's more stuff that we can just have, you're actually breaking down the human condition. We are now not human beings who interact anymore. We're just people who consume things. And I would say that would break the human spirit in general. I mean, I have an example to use, a fictional example that would explain it better, but
okay, go ahead.
I get the feeling that it wouldn't.
I want to respond to what your argument actually is. I don't want to do what all these people, hate spamming me and threatening to kill me have been saying, where they've been distorting what I'm saying. So I want to understand your argument thoroughly. So please use your fictional example.
Okay. What is human relations inside of capitalism are commodity exchanges?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
How would that be different in a system where everything is commodities, or everything is products of human labor to a point where I don't know, because you're arguing something that's so far beyond anything we have right now that I don't have an example.
Right. The reason that human relations are commodity exchanges is because there is a scarcity of commodities, right? When
Okay.
you have to struggle every day, you have to go out and have a daily battle to survive. Your relationships with other people are therefore tainted by that struggle to survive. But when there is an absence of scarcity, and people are no longer threatened by hunger, and people are no longer threatened by unemployment, that lays the basis for human relations to become genuine once and for all, because there is no fear of scarcity hanging over their heads.
So you're telling me life in the Soviet Union was exactly the way that you would describe capitalism?
Because there was scarcity. Yes, the Soviet Union was building socialism on the basis
So
of
you're
scarcity.
saying people in the Soviet Union lived in fear of being removed from their jobs and lived in fear of scarcity?
Not as much as under capitalism. They had a much higher level of job security, and such. But yes, right, the Soviet Union had not reached a higher level of development than the Western capitalist countries had. And ultimately, for socialism to truly blossom, it must be a higher form of production, a higher mode of production than capitalism. I mean, and the socialist countries were able to provide a much better living standard to their working class, but they were certainly not approaching the final goal of communism by any means. And I think that the Cold War kind of created a problem, because during the Cold War, it wasn't just Mao and the Gang of Four, but also Che Guevara and his writing on the New Socialist Man. This understanding that communism is based on abundance, right? And the struggle of communists is for a higher level of productive forces got obscured. And the reason it got obscured is because the socialist countries were under attack, and they were surrounded, and they were blockaded, and they were trying to present that their system was better. And so in order to do that, they tried to implement levels of egalitarianism in their socialist countries that the material basis of society was not yet ready for. And that caused a lot of problems. And what we're talking about here, what Lenin talks about in The State and Revolution, about the higher phase of communism, about it being based on a higher level of productive forces, got obscured in the process of the Cold War. The Soviet Union claimed, around the time that Stalin died, there's a book by William C. Foster where he says in the 1950s the Soviet Union was on the verge of being full communism. Well, that was BS. That's ridiculous. I mean, the Soviet Union
I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, and you won't agree, but I think for the Gang of Four to argue that China in the 1970s, when so much of the country didn't have electricity and running water, and there was all kinds of heavy state coercion and stuff going on, that they were on the verge of establishing communism, was not correct. Pol Pot
No, I don't think so.
Pol Pot claimed that Cambodia could have full communism without industry.
Pol Pot
right?
was not a communist.
Right, but he was an ultra-left insane person, and he claimed that in Cambodia they could have full communism without industry on the basis of agrarianism. And that
theoretically, yes.
Well, but
as is defined by
not
a series of
Marx.
social relations.
But not according to Marx. And
yes,
and
again, we're going to come back to the argument of you
of
arguing a level of consumption that was literally impossible to Marx.
But
he
what I'm
wasn't
telling you is,
advocating
as long as there is scarcity,
super.
There's going to be coercion. You're going to have a state when there's scarcity, right? As long as there's scarcity, you're going to have a state.
So literally, your conception of communism is just free stuff, no state.
Is a society where you can just take what you need and do what you feel like doing. Labor becomes life's prime want, not a necessity. Right?
Okay.
This is
communism. Okay. Now that we understand your definition of communism,
a stateless, classless world based on vast material abundance.
So, how do you funnel? You're saying just have such a super abundance of input that there is no need to organize any output.
That technology has advanced to the point that the amount of human labor needed in production is vastly, vastly low. So low that people work simply because they feel like it.
That's not what I asked
you. It's a way to not be bored.
So you're saying that the resource input would be so astronomically great that the amount that the output would not need to be regulated in any way, shape, or form.
That's what Marx said.
I really don't think he did. He said that.
Well, I mean, Lenin said it as well. I mean, I have the quotes in front of me.
I don't think they were talking to that degree.
Well,
I think production to the point where you didn't have to worry. that you didn't have to worry about going hungry or losing your job. I don't think they were talking about a level of billionaire and
But
like
it
a
would have to be
utopian
that high in
scientific
order to
conception.
have no coercion, in order to have a society where no one made anyone do any work and no one was threatened with unemployment or anything in order to do any work. When people literally work completely voluntarily and literally take whatever they want from society, in order to have that level, you would have to have an astronomical level of abundance.
Yes, and the level of abundance that you're suggesting in order to do that is physically impossible. I'm
Well,
sorry,
I
I'm
mean,
not buying this mining off other planets
we're
and
already
stuff.
doing it. China's getting helium-3 from the moon. I mean, why? And who's to say we can't get it from Mars? Who's to say we can't get it from Saturn?
Because the
Right?
cost of
And
getting
who's
it
to
is
say
greater
that
than what would be.
there are not, for example, in the 1970s, the minerals that people die over in Africa were worthless, right? But now they're very, very valuable because of computers. Who's to say there aren't resources on Earth that could be utilized in different ways that could create this abundance?
Because they're still finite.
Right, but who's to say that we can't necessarily develop a way of recycling, for example, right? I mean, there. Why are you limiting
Even recycling.
human? Why are you limiting human potential? Why are
I'm
you
not
arguing?
limiting human potential. I'm limiting
have
a
gone
finite world of
Right, but
physical
we have
resources.
gone from
I'm not talking
hunter-gatherers
about
in the
human
woods.
labor.
I know, but we have gone from using sticks and rocks as tools to having iPhones. Okay, like this conversation,
And
way
the
we're
amount of
talking
resources
right now
that
is
exist in
something
the world are the
that
same.
to an app. This is something that to a person maybe 50 years ago or 60, 70 years ago, this kind of conversation, the way we're talking now over Skype and it's being broadcast on YouTube, would have sounded like the most crazy, outlandish thing they'd ever heard. It would have sounded like some kind of wild
I'm not
science
arguing
fiction.
that.
But right. So why do you think human beings couldn't develop even further?
I'm
Why do
not
you think
saying human beings couldn't develop further.
Right. Then why are
I'm
you
saying
it's
that there
not
are
possible
physical
we could use
limitations.
resources in a different way? That's what I'm
Because
saying,
there
is
is
we could
still a
develop
physical
ways of
limitation.
using
You cannot,
resources that are
unless you
different
are
than what we use them
advocating
now.
for a replicator, which literally transforms energy into matter. You're talking about ignoring the fact that there is a physical limitation. Whether 1,000 years ago or today, there is still a limit to the amount of steel that exists.
There is no limit to human growth. That human growth and potential is limited now because of the profit system and capitalism.
Yes, there's
But
a
with
difference
human
between
reason-
human potential and thought and physical reality.
Yes, but and again, space, right? Again, different uses of different ways of using things, right? Who's to say we can't use water as energy, right? I mean, who is to say that new inventions can't be discovered? I mean, if we could get the fact that big oil has spent so much money to try and stop nuclear energy, right? I mean, they've worked so hard to prevent nuclear energy from being perfected, from being developed, and because they don't want to be put out of business. It's capitalism that is keeping us the way we are currently. And with the restraints of the profit system lifted, human potential could really, really soar.
I'm not talking about human potential.
Right, and you're saying that we can, we have finite resources on the planet, and that these resources are limited. And I'm saying that first of all, we can use them in different ways potentially. Second of all, who says we're limited to this planet when already, and there's articles in the New York Times advocating mining asteroids. Who's to say we're restricted to just this planet, right?
Well, of course they're advocating that because they know it's also finite on the planet, and they're
Right.
desperately trying to keep the system going.
Right.
And I would
But
also
the
like to
ruling
argue that
class-
even if China is mining helium, whatever, from the moon, I'd argue that the state is the one doing it. That coercive system that needs to be abolished. What's being done is only
Right.
possible because of the state.
Right. I agree. I mean, I'm not saying the state isn't the one doing it. I'm saying that abundance. That wait a second. Now you lost me. Why is the Chinese state mining from the moon an argument against what I'm saying?
Because you're saying that this would happen in superabundance, yet it's this would happen without a state, yet it's literally the state doing it.
No, I'm saying that the kind of abundance that would be necessary to abolish the state is possible, and the fact that we're already able to extract resources from the moon shows that we're not limited to the resources on this planet, right? I'm not
Okay,
saying that.
Caleb,
Yeah,
do you know how long it takes to get to another planet? Oh, but technology will come along to change that. I mean, literally,
it
your
would
answer is
obviously
to
have
every
to.
limitation that there is physically. You just say, "Yeah, but technology will change that."
It would have to. It would
No,
have
it
to.
doesn't have
The
to.
thing is, right, that if we're talking about communism, about that final goal of communism, we're talking about a society with vast material abundance. That we agree on that
Yeah,
much,
I think the
right?
problem is what we're defining as vast material abundance. Either a rational allocation and use of resources, or
So
a
do you
science
do
fiction
you think
fantasy that you're
communism is
talking
not
about.
possible?
I didn't say that. I said I
It
think
sounds like that's
we're
what you're
having a
saying.
difference over what that abundance means. I'm saying a rational allocation of resources that allows us to continue to function the planet without destroying it while meeting human need, and you're talking about scientific utopianism.
Well, what you're describing as socialism is a controlled form of socialism, which I'm for. But the ultimate goal of a stateless and classless world is not a society where people are controlled and just have what they need. The goal of communism is a society with no coercion, is a
Yeah,
society
I'm
where
talking about
all
something that
division.
is real life. You are talking about something that
Right?
is science
So you
fiction.
don't believe communism is possible?
I believe communism is possible. I think the level of abundance you're talking about is not possible.
But Marx very clearly states
No, he didn't,
the
because
yes,
just a
only
concept
then, he
didn't
says.
exist.
What?
How could he have advocated something where the concept didn't even exist?
All
I
I'm
do not
advocating
believe for a
is what he
second
wrote
that
in the
Marx said,
Critique of the
yeah, we're
Growth of
all going to be
Progress.
billionaires now, or we're going to
No,
all
he
have
said
billionaire level consumption.
in the higher phase of communist society, after the
You are
enslaving
taking that
subordination of,
quote and
yes,
redefining it to mean what
no,
you
I'm
want.
not. I'm not redefining it. I'm not redefining it in any
You're
way.
redefining what
No, I'm
abundance
not.
is. You've taken abundance
No.
from being enough that people
He
need.
explains what it is. In the higher phase of communist society, after the enslaving subordination of the individual to the division of labor, and therewith also the antithesis between mental and physical labor has vanished, after labor becomes not only a means of life, but life's prime want, after the productive forces have also increased with the all-around development of the individual, and all the springs of cooperative wealth flow more abundantly, only then can the narrow horizon of bourgeois right be crossed in its entirety, and society inscribe on its banner, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. He very clearly states exactly what I'm saying, which
Okay,
is that unless you
I
get that level of abundance that breaks down all the things I just said, you can't have communism. So
okay, I
essentially, I'm
understand
arguing
that.
we can get to communism, and you are arguing we cannot.
No, that's not what I'm arguing. I'm saying that level of abundance that you are describing is not necessary to actually accomplish that.
So
And I'm also arguing that that level of that consumption and abundance isn't possible.
okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
let me ask you.
You're advocating for technology that we don't even have a concept of even making work.
Okay, so how then does labor become not only a means of life but life's prime want without this level of abundance?
You can do it without that much.
So people
You
just
can
work
still
voluntarily.
produce enough, but not to
But
this
that's not what
absurd degree.
that's not what it says. It doesn't say you can still produce enough. It says labor has
Oh
not
my
only
God.
become a means of life but life's prime want. Meaning
You
people
can
work
still
voluntarily.
produce enough to have an abundance, not that
Yeah.
ridiculous concept of abundance.
So you're saying that people can work without any coercion with no abundance.
I didn't say no abundance. I said the level of abundance you're talking about.
So how does this work? How does this work? We don't have the level of abundance I'm talking about, but people just work voluntarily.
Yes, I'm not talking about some kind of super. You're essentially
Right.
arguing for infinite abundance.
Okay, but I'm asking you, can you describe what this looks like? A society that doesn't have the level of abundance I'm describing, where people only work because they feel like it. How does
It's
that
literally
work?
the same thing, but just not with super ridiculous levels of abundance.
So
Literally the same thing, just not with the not with the science fiction twist to it.
so how does it work though? How do the people?
The exact same way.
What do you mean? What is that? Because the way I'm arguing is their labor will, there'll be so little labor that is necessary.
Yeah, so there still would be so little labor. I mean, I
how's that
can
different than
say
what I'm
the same
saying?
thing. Explain the same thing from your perspective. Oh, there's just so much. Oh, there's just so much. Okay, so I'm saying there's not as much as that because it's not necessary, and it works the
Right,
same
but
way.
what I'm arguing is that in order to achieve these things, what Maoists call the four alls, that vast material abundance is required. And you're saying, yeah, but not as much as you want. So what is the difference between, like, what's the line? What kind of abundance?
Physical
I got,
reality is the line.
right. But I'm asking you though, then so what is the difference between our two positions? You agree that some abundance is necessary for this, but not the level of abundance I'm saying. I'm saying that this level of abundance is necessary in order
Okay,
to
and I would say it's not necessary. And not only would I say it's not necessary, it's not possible.
Okay, so again, how do we achieve the things I read in that quotation
The same
in a
way.
state of
I
scarcity?
don't understand what you're not getting here. You can have abundance that is an abundance, and then an abundance that is ridiculously great. There is a scale between these two things.
Right, but I'm advocating for an abundance that is so great that people only work because they feel like doing, because
And
there's no
I'm arguing
division
for the
between
same thing. You're arguing
mental and
no.
manual labor. So then, would that not mean everyone's a billionaire?
No, it wouldn't necessarily mean that, because now we have to go back to the
Well,
definition of a billionaire, which wouldn't even apply in
a
this
billionaire is
society.
somebody with a huge amount of wealth, and they only have to work because they feel like it, and they only work to entertain themselves. They don't have to work in order to live. They have access to all kinds of transportation and all kinds of technology and
No, a
information
billionaire
at
is
their
someone who
fingertips.
owns billions of dollars.
Okay, well,
By that
in
logic,
that
you could
right,
say
I
the
mean,
same
I
thing about a
think
millionaire.
the entire right, but the point that I'm making is that we want all of humanity to have the access to resources in abundance that lays the basis for the four alls.
Yes, I agree. But I
Okay,
am
then we
saying
agree.
that the amount of abundance, the degree of abundance that you are saying is necessary is physically impossible. You
But
have no
but then
actual
how are
plan. You have no actual plan for what this is
we're
or
talking
how
about
it would
thousands
work.
of years in the future? I don't have a physical plan. I'm not
Really?
drawing
Because you
up a.
just demanded one out of me.
Well, no, but I mean, you're telling me that what I'm describing here, I see this quote as everyone's a billionaire. That's how I interpret this quote. And you're telling me it's not that, but it is that.
No, I'm
Like,
saying it's not the degree. I don't know how many times I've had to say the word degree.
right. But so what's the difference?
One is not physically possible, the other is.
Right. But I'm defining everyone's a billionaire as that quote I just read. And you're
Okay.
saying, well, that's that
Okay,
quote you just
so
read. I agree with it, but that doesn't mean everyone's
okay,
a
so
billionaire.
here's the problem. Abundance. We both agree with the abundance thing. The difference is that I am arguing an abundance that can materially exist. You are arguing one that
But
materially cannot exist unless you take into account completely fictional stuff that doesn't exist but theoretically could exist.
but no, you're saying that this quote I read you from Marx is possible.
Yes, we are
And so am
arguing
I.
over the
And I think
definition of what is abundance. How much is abundance?
enough to create the quote that I just read to you.
And we would disagree on what that an amount is. It seems
But
like
I never said an amount that was necessary to create this.
we're
I
both
simply
talking
said,
about a different amount that would both
no,
qualify
it sounds
as
like we're talking
abundance.
about the same thing,
Okay, so
right?
you literally believe abundance is literally just infinite. So Marx was literally just saying, okay,
Yes, I believe
infinite.
human creativity and brilliance is unlimited. I believe that there is no limit to human growth and creativity, that humans will continue
I'm
to
not
expand as a
arguing
species.
against that. I'm arguing against the physical limitations of reality. The amount of resources that exist.
Right, but it seems like the bone of our contention is I'm arguing that the higher stage of communism, by definition, makes everyone into a billionaire, and you're saying no, it doesn't, or I'm trying to get to where we
No,
disagree.
I'm saying
it seems like
it making everybody the same level as a billionaire is physically impossible.
well,
It
I'm
cannot be done.
arguing that if you have a society where every person only works because they want to, where there's no division between mental and manual labor, when people can just take what they want and do what they feel like doing, by definition, everyone is wealthier than billionaires currently are in our time.
Okay, if that's how you want to define it, if that's how you want to define billionaire, okay, then fine. But the argument here is the amount that society would have to produce in order to get to that. And the amount that you are advocating that we produce to get to that is not physically possible.
I'm not advocating any specific amount.
I am arguing and advocating for an amount that is actually possible.
So you think, according to my logic, you think people can be billionaires.
If you're saying that there is no amount that you're referring to, okay, what is the amount that you're referring to?
I'm not referring to an amount. I'm referring to a state of society, of social relations that are dependent upon abundance. And
okay, how much abundance would it require to do that?
I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. We don't know. Marx wrote.
That's why I am talking about an amount that's within reason of the physical limitations of the world that we live in.
Okay, and you're talking about an amount.
You won't talk about an actual physical amount because you don't have a definition.
This is a hypothetical conversation. I'm talking about how the state of being that requires the four alls and the fulfillment of communism is based on vast abundance. You agree with that, and I've said that we're in agreement. You're just saying, well, yeah, but the amount of abundance you want is too high. All I've ever said is I want enough abundance to create this set of social relations.
Okay, but then you started talking about going to the moon and then going to other planets to mine out resources. I am saying the amount of consumption would have to be within a physical existence that we are able to get to. But you are essentially advocating infinite resources without actually saying it.
I do believe that human beings are greatly intelligent.
I'm not talking about human potential. I'm talking about physical resources.
So yes, anything humans do will take place in the physical world. No question about it. But
steel is infinite because humans.
No.
Because that's what you just said.
No, I mean, we may run out of steel, but who's to say we couldn't use some other metal, right? I mean, I don't think there's a limit to human intelligence potential, but are there physical limits to particular resources on particular planets? Of course there are.
But you're not defining what that level of... Okay, so how would we get to superabundance if you can't define what superabundance is?
Superabundance is enough abundance to lay the basis for this set of social relations.
Okay, how much is that?
As communism. We don't know.
I could actually take a guess.
Okay, go ahead.
I would say take the amount of resources that we have, allocate them, one, to meet the immediate material needs of everybody in the world. That would be the first thing.
Okay.
Once we had that, we can then begin to take the amount of resources that we have and allocate them towards luxury, the easing of life in general.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Yes, that would be how it would be done. But we would be well aware of what limits exist in the material world.
You would have to. You're planning an economy. You have to be rational.
Well, yours isn't. Yours is just saying, go to space, get more.
Is that the higher stage of communism, the social relations I just listed, are on the basis of vast abundance, and that by definition would make everyone in a communist society wealthier than a billionaire.
In some kind of science fiction interpretation.
Well, the conversation went a lot of different places because you were telling me that these social relations were not possible. Now you agree that they are possible.
No, I didn't say these social relations weren't possible. I said they were possible with less.
But you said that they're based on abundance. You agree that they're based on abundance.
Yes, and I said that your level of abundance that you are advocating for
But I'm not advocating
irrational.
A specific level of abundance. I'm advocating enough abundance to create this level of social relations.
That's the problem. You cannot define what it is or what is the point to
and neither could Marx. Neither could Marx.
I think I just did relatively.
No, you said that we would start by making sure everyone has their needs
Yes.
met. Clearly, I agree. And then from there, we would build up. I agree. And we would continue to build up until we got this level of social relations.
Okay,
And
so basically,
and obviously, we would have to build up on the basis of things that actually exist.
Okay, but then you specifically advocate things we don't have access to, and would not have access to for a very long time. So all you're saying is that you agree with what I'm saying, but then taking the abundance further, because
I
because unlimited potential and unlimited resources.
Right. I don't think you should ever put any pessimistic doubt on the potential
It's
of
not
human beings.
pessimistic doubt; it's reality.
I don't. I think the last 6,000 years have been a very clear demonstration of the fact that humans are capable of constantly inventing new things and reaching new heights. And so I would never declare that there is a limit to human potential. While there may be limitations to resources, there may be limitations to population, there may be limitations to this or that. That I don't ever put an artificial restraint and say that humans will only go this far, because I think that we are capable of really, really changing things and doing infinite amounts of things. But at the end of the day, back to the original basis of the conversation, I argued that we can reach the four alls, and that requires a higher level of abundance, and that those four alls can be reached. And when we reach them, and when we reach a society where people just work because they feel like working, where there's no division between mental and manual labor, when there's no coercion and no state, when we reach that level of the society, by definition, everyone is far richer than billionaires are in our time. So by that definition, if we say abolish billionaires, we are giving up on that great aspiration. And that's why Jacobin and Bosch and all of them are wrong to say it.
Okay, I would agree with you
Okay, we agree.
on that, but the level of abundance you're arguing is not possible. And it doesn't matter what Jacobin magazine. It doesn't matter what Trash Bin magazine and its Israeli money says. I do not.
Okay, but
I do
I'm
not
not
care what
understanding what we
Vosh
disagree
and
about.
Thought Slime and the
So
rest
you're
of
not
these
really
fucking
disagreeing
radlibs.
about the billionaires thing. You're just disagreeing with my statement that human beings' potential is unlimited. That's really the crux of
No,
our
I'm not
disagreement.
saying human potential is limited. I think resources are limited. I think the main problem is one, the definition of billionaire. I don't think you should be saying don't oppose saying abolish billionaires, because a billionaire is defined by the amount of money that they have. I think you're misusing the definition of billionaire and using your own, and I think that's confusing people.
Right. And the reason that I have made the decision to use that word is because I want to make clear that these set of social relations we define is based on a higher level of abundance than we currently experience, and that we do not advocate people being poorer, which is widely perceived and is what a lot of social democrats frankly do advocate. And
Because
in
social
order to make that
democrats
point,
preserve capitalism.
right? Yeah,
We're not advocating what they're advocating.
I know, and I'm not arguing with you. I'm arguing with them.
Okay,
You don't. You say abolish capitalism, not abolish billionaires. They say abolish billionaires.
okay, yeah, that would be the difference. But the problem is the way that you're using the word billionaire. I would just stop saying it, because
But
that's where the confusion lies.
okay, but I want to make this point because I am deeply concerned about the fact that the broad masses of Americans have been convinced that we want to make them poorer. And in order to make sure that they don't think that, it is necessary to not use phrases that make it sound like we are opposed to wealth in principle, and make clear instead that we oppose social relations through which wealth is acquired through exploitation.
Okay, but I don't think you're making that argument by saying anti billionaire is anti Marxist. I don't think you're making that.
Because if you say you are opposed to billionaires, not opposed to capitalists, but opposed to billionaires, you are saying that you don't want to reach a state of abundance that could necessitate breaking down breaking down social relations and creating communist relations.
The real problem here is the use of the word billionaire.
Right.
Why are you?
And at the end
Why
of the day,
even?
in
I mean,
communism,
I
there would be
get
no
what
money.
you're trying to say, but
Yes,
that's not what's coming across when you say it.
I know, but it needs to be said because there is a wide perception that we oppose wealth and that we want people to be poorer. And communism is based on a vast level of wealth existing.
Okay, yes, but the way that you're using the word billionaire is not conveying that.
Right.
What you should be saying instead is superabundance for everyone. We're
Right.
opposed to. I mean, we're in support of superabundance for everybody. But when you start
Yes.
saying, when you start using the word billionaire like that, you're expressing to people the opposite of what you mean.
No, I'm making clear that
Really, because everybody is hearing the opposite of what you're saying.
because Marxism has been so obscured. That's the point. That's why I said it. I'm trying to get people to understand that the problem is not wealth. The problem is how wealth is created, and the problem
Then
is
why
poverty.
don't you say that instead of defending
I've
the
been
word
saying
billionaire?
that for like an hour here,
Okay, yes, I agree.
and I said
But
that on
why
Twitter
are you
over and
using
over and
the
over
word
again.
billionaire to do that?
Because these people use the word billionaire, and in doing so, create the perception that Marxists and leftists are opposed to wealth, which we are not.
Okay, but when you use billionaire in this way, it doesn't get conveyed.
But it's a response to people using billionaire already. I
Okay,
am polemicizing
yes,
against a
that's
popular
true,
liberal slogan
but it doesn't
that is
work.
not consistent with Marxism.
It doesn't work. People aren't understanding what you're saying. It seems like you've
I
created
think
this.
a lot of them are.
You've
I've
created
gotten
an expression. You've created this expression of defending. You've created this expression to convey this idea.
Yes.
It's a horrible phrase to use to express this idea.
Well, it's not even
It's
my phrase.
ne-
I'm reacting to someone else's phrase. I'm
Okay,
saying
yeah,
that someone else's phrase is not correct.
even them, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, the expression that you're, this aesthetic, isn't conveying what it is that you mean. I would say drop this whole thing with the billionaires, and just argue the actual thing itself.
Allow average working class people to look at the socialist movement and think, oh, they oppose wealth. And I mean, no, we need to fight for materialism.
Yeah, but that's not what we're saying.
Defend the ideas that you and I just discussed on here.
Okay,
yes.
But you're not conveying that by using this expression.
Yes, I am. Well, first of all, I'm not. It's not my expression. I'm negatively criticizing another expression. They said abolish billionaires. I'm saying that is anti-Marxist.
And a billionaire is someone who has billions of dollars. It is not someone who has a particular... That would go along with it. That would be something, that level of consumption, access to resources, etc., that would go along with someone having billions of dollars.
Right, and I'm saying we don't want to abolish that level of abundance. We want it to be accessible to all people.
Okay, but what you're saying doesn't convey that.
Well, I mean, that's
what you mean, but it's not conveying that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty well conveyed. I mean, I've been repeating it over and over again, and I don't. You seem to understand it. There's all kinds of people in the comments who seem to understand it. Everyone who actually listens to what I said seems to understand it. It's really not that hard of a concept to understand.
Yeah, I know. I'm not disagreeing with the concept.
Right. So
there you go. Somebody there just said abolish economic inequality. That would be a better phrase.
No, I wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. Because
Why?
if everyone is still at the level that we're at now and equal, that is not desirable, right? Oh, it's just everyone's equal. Okay, people are starving in Africa. Okay, now we just equalized everything and froze human relations. At that, we're nowhere closer to the ultimate goal of communism.
Okay, if anybody thinks that's what it is, and I'm sure that there's been enough U.S. government propaganda, whatever, to make people think that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. It's at the point where eliminating inequality is literally a better way of saying it. I mean,
no, it's not.
You know
because
what?
That makes it sound like we want everyone to be equal. Right?
That's not what it means.
But yeah, but if you say eliminate inequality, that's what that sounds like. The only way to eliminate inequality is with greater abundance. It's not everyone getting paid the same. That's what people think communism is. And if you say, oh, I'm against inequality by itself, that just sounds like, oh, I want everyone to get paid the same.
And what you're saying doesn't sound anything like what it is that you mean.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
I said I want to create a state of abundance where everyone has access to what
yes,
billionaires
but
have.
saying anti-billionaire is anti-Marxist doesn't convey that.
Yeah. Yes,
no one hears that.
Yes,
After you have to explain that to them.
To
after you explain it to them, yes. But the thing is not self-explanatory.
I made a 44-minute video explaining it with quotes from Marx. I explained it on Twitter about 25, 75 times. And
I'm sorry,
who actually understood what I was saying understood it. I just got an endless amount of people that were saying, "Oh, you like Jeff Bezos," which I clearly don't. So
no,
you know,
okay, I'm not advocating. I'm not saying
I
that.
know,
I'm
but those people are not saying that because I didn't explain it well enough. Anyone who actually listens to me understands what I'm talking about.
The criticism that you're making of saying end inequality and why that's not a good slogan is literally the same argument that I would say against about the billionaires.
Okay.
It's the same argument.
But if you say to an average person, end inequality, they are going to interpret that as creating equality.
And when you say to someone anti-billionaire is anti-Marxist, they're going to think you're defending billionaires.
No, I'm defending wealth.
I know that's not what you mean, but that's not what people are going to hear.
Okay. Well, if anything, it was clever bait. You know, to have this discussion, because this discussion needs to be had. And I provoked this discussion between you and me and thousands of people across the United States by putting it that way and raising the alarm. And that in and of itself is astronomically valuable because people need to be discussing what Marxism actually is. So and by being provocative and saying things in a way that confuses people at first and causing them to then have to dig deeper into what he means and then read Marx and read Lenin, if doing that and creating enough of a stir to get that done and further the ideology of Marxism, Leninism, and get people to actually understand this, if doing that was a little bit confusing for people, guilty as charged.
Yeah, I'm pretty guilty, actually.
Well, it's been a fun discussion, Jay.
Okay, I'll just make one more point.
Go ahead.
From all of the third world cadre that I've talked to, if I came at the one end inequality, they would understand that far before they would understand defending billionaire level of consumption.
It's funny because I got the exact opposite response from all the third world people. I had people in Bangladesh and people in Latin America say, what's wrong with what you're saying? This is what our governments are constantly saying. They want us all to be richer. I got the exact opposite response from people that I talk to in the third world. But that's okay. We talk to different people.
Okay.
All right. It's been fun.
Okay, and with that, I will end the stream.
Okay,
all right,
cool.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for being here.
I'll be live later tonight, folks. Tune in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's also going to do a live stream by himself and do that. All
sure
right.
thing.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye.